Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Mums for Mum webinar, proudly hosted by Immunity Group Australia. Today we're diving into an open and heartfelt conversation around food allergies, oral immunotherapy, and the lived experiences of real families navigating this journey. If you are just about to begin your Dr. Jones Protocol OIT journey, you're in the right place. I'm Sarah, and I'll be your moderator today. And I'm thrilled to be joined by 5 incredible mums, Nina, Amelia, Anna, Christy, and Sam, who will be sharing their stories and answering some of the most common questions we've received from the community. So, beautiful mums, would you like to give everyone a wave so that they know who you are? Yeah, awesome. So just a quick note before we begin. For any questions specifically related to medications, we kindly ask that you direct those to the program doctors. And for anything regarding medication brands, please consult the program pharmacists. Right. So without further ado, we've got quite a bit to get through. We had quite a large number of amazing questions come through from our community. And so what we've done is we've put them together, summarized them, and we're going to kick off those questions. So we'll see how far we get today with the questions. And we're going to kick the questions off with like a 2-part question. So the first question that came from our community was, what do you feel were the easiest and most difficult aspects of navigating the OIT program with either a teen, primary school age child, preschooler or toddler? How did you manage the more tricky aspects? And the second part to that question is, what do you feel were the easiest and most difficult aspects of navigating the OIT program with the specific allergens you were desensitizing to, and how did you work through the more tricky aspects? So we'll go to Anna first because she's with us for a short period of time. Anna, would you like to answer those 2 questions for us today?
Hi, everyone. So I have a 13-year-old boy, Stefano. He was desensitizing to wheat, eggs, and peanuts. Well, actually, he's almost 13. I guess it's both tricky, and the easiest part of it is that he's old enough to understand why he's in the program. But he also is old enough to understand the risks associated with being part of the program and dosing with his allergens and stuff like that. Our biggest thing was constant communication and talking about his feelings and why we were doing the program, and just talking about like what it was going to mean at the end of the program. So we're actually finished the program, and he's only just, 3 weeks he finished week. So we're actually staying at a hotel in the city, and we've actually just come from our first ever hotel breakfast. But on top of having hotel breakfast, he actually ate pancakes, so wheat and eggs, and tasted some of Dad's scrambled eggs and hash browns and whatever else. And my poached eggs. So pretty amazing. Something that 14 months ago we didn't think was going to be possible, but is absolutely possible. So it's been, it feels like we started like a few months ago, but it also feels like 100 years have passed. So it's both, the challenges do pay off in the end. Like, we had to manage very early mornings, and there was some, he pushed back on not wanting to try to have things due to the taste. We just had to get creative with it. So I do apologize, Sarah. There was 2 parts to your question, but I can't remember what they were. So sorry.
Oh, no, you did great, Anna. So it was just like, how old's your child? And you've let us know that, and then what you were desensitizing to. So, and the easiest sort of tricky elements of those. So that's awesome,
Yeah,
Anna.
taste can be a bit of a tricky one. You've just got to be really creative. And I guess one of the biggest thing, and especially when they're like the younger age, so I'm still lucky that he's in that kind of, he's not too grown up for bribes and rewards. Whereas I think Sam's daughter might be a bit beyond that. Whereas I can still bribe him with, come on, try this, and we'll get you a new game for the Switch, or we'll take you to Time Zone, or do something. So, unfortunately, sometimes you have to resort to that. But come here. He will give you testament of how much it's paid off. So,
That's
you want to come say
wonderful,
hi?
Anna. Yeah. And so great to hear that you came from your first hotel breakfast. That's like such a milestone, you know.
That is, yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Would anyone else like to share on the panel? You can just come off mute, Sam.
Yeah. Well, I'm speaking from the perspective of a 19-year-old who, she was 18 when she started in March last year. Multiple food allergies, possibly the most in the program. So we've got egg and dairy and many tree nuts, sesame, peanut. I think the easiest part is clearly, like Anna said, teenagers are old enough to understand why they're doing it and self-motivated. My daughter really wanted to do the program, and I couldn't get her in there fast enough. She had no anxiety whatsoever going in, because the anxiety of daily living with the possibility of reacting to all her allergens was far greater than from day one of the program. So I didn't have any of those issues at all. However, they get to an age where they think they're invincible. So the rules around the program about rest periods and dosing at certain times, she would push the boundaries a little bit and want to sleep in, and that's okay to a point. But then suddenly when they do feel a little bit off or nauseous or scratchy throat, they realise, yeah, there's a reason behind that. Maybe you just have to pull back and look at whether, are you following these rules or aren't you? And going out at night after uni with friends, I'd be sitting at home at 11 o'clock at night going, you sort of have to get up tomorrow morning at 7 and dose. What's going on? Where are you? That's teenagers in general, but when you've got the program to add to it, they definitely want to push the boundaries a little bit. But that was sort of more so I felt in the first part of the program. After a while, after the first maybe 8-10 months or so, she really just settled right in and knew what she had to do. And I'm sort of fairly confident now that I don't have to worry about her. I'd say just the other thing that's hard for a parent with an older child is knowing that you really want someone to be there with them when they're dosing, because they're at an age where you don't have to be at home anymore. I can be at work. My husband's at work. We're out. We don't have to worry. She drives. That every morning, just knowing that there is someone at least nearby that she could call, or that that could drop in really quickly if she did have some sort of reaction or just didn't feel well, that can be a little bit tricky, having a backup plan. But I think that's most of it.
Yeah, wonderful, Sam. And that's such a great point, because when you've got the little ones, we're around all the time, right? We're
Yeah.
not leaving them by themselves. But if you've got a teen or a young adult within the program, yeah, that would be a completely
Yeah,
different ball
it's
game, I
almost like
think.
having a toddler again, in the sense that you're tied to a routine and being at home and having to look after them for that hour or that 2 hours, whatever. And as time goes on, it doesn't have to be that strict, but I really do advise just having, whether it's a friend or a relative or a neighbour, just someone who knows that that's the time they tend to dose, that's where they are, and a few options on the phone if they can just call someone if they really are struggling. Look, it hasn't really happened to us, but it is just always good having plan B, someone around.
Definitely. Thanks, Sam. Would anyone else like to share this first question? It's a
I'll
yeah,
just
go
say
for it, Christy.
I'll go quickly. I have got another teen as well, so we're probably better to hear from somebody that's got the younger kids. But I'll quickly go on. I have a daughter who's currently 16. We desensitized for egg and dairy. We graduated egg in December last year, and we finished milk in March this year. I think the ease of the age, so you can tell them, and they've lived 15 years of exclusion, so they have got the idea of hope in their head. So that's very good for teenagers. The hardest part, we were in Brisbane, and we travelled to Sydney once a fortnight for dosing. So that was probably the hardest part for those. That updosing day was an extremely long day, getting up early, especially with the time zone in summer, at 4 a.m. to catch a 5 a.m. flight, then to catch an hour Uber to the clinic, and then all again in reverse. But yeah, with the other lad, it's the same. You get the pushback, but they can understand. Yet I would look at all the parents with younger kids thinking, I wish that was me, so I hadn't had to live the 10 years of exclusion of what we have done. So
Thanks, Christy. Nina?
I might jump in. So I had two children. One was 4, Alex was 4, and we were initially avoiding 4 nuts plus a peanut. It was mixed diagnosis, as half of our family's experience, until we meet Dr. Jones and do his testing. And then he says, well, I don't think this is a true allergy. So he luckily passed the majority of challenges. So the next day we were able to introduce peanut and a couple of nuts, but he was anaphylactic to walnut and pecan, as we kind of, I always knew, given his reactions in the past. So a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, very different children. Alex, the 4-year-old, is generally a vomiting child. So he would, look at something that he thinks is disgusting and he would vomit. He would look at a dog poo and vomit. In the car, he would vomit. So he is generally sensitive in that sense. So if anyone has ever driven with me, he knows that I'm not really a gentle driver. So driving to the clinic, I had to be very careful, because if he vomited, I not only needed to have spare clothes, but also, you have to follow the protocol for the breakfast again and wait. And it was car sickness in his case often. For Amelia, she lived for 8 years with 15 hospitalizations under our belt, extreme sort of hundreds of exposures each year at school, very reactive, contact reactive, airborne reactive, asthma, and all the other aspects. So for me, managing 2 children, she has milk and egg, he has walnut and pecan, completely different allergies. There was this kids shop in Crow's Nest where we're located, Professor Plum's. So every time we went there for the updose, we would have to spend another hour going to Professor Plum's, buying them a toy. So a lot of positive reinforcement. Not only that, I also had to run the clinic and run the program. And it was only 6 families really of us who started together, but still all the logistics as well. So I guess for me, the challenge was being a mom still. When your child has a sickness, and I could be sad for them in that moment, but I still have to be positive for everybody else. So juggling constant sort of the competing demands. And also Alex finished 10 months before Amelia. So he was going around school saying, I'm not allergic anymore, but my sister is. And given her history of bullying, social isolation, and a lot of hospitalizations, constant ones before the program, psychologically it was hard to keep her motivated, but we did it. They are freely eating, and we went to Japan to celebrate.
Thank you, Nina. And thanks for sharing that. I'm just sitting here because being I'm one mum out of our group, the 2025 group that will be starting this program shortly with my daughter, and just listening to you all so far is just so inspiring. So thank you for sharing your stories. And Amelia, would you like to share as well?
Morning, everyone. So my son's 10 turning 11, so I do it does resonate, the commitment that they have to have within themselves as well to understand their why. I believe that my son has made it really easy for me, but I do have another child who doesn't have allergies, but I always think if it was her, it would be a little bit more challenging with timings and everything. So we have to travel interstate. So I found that the trickiest part is probably just timing our flights to come in. And making sure that he's up at 4:30. We have our breakfast, and then we have another breakfast right before we get in, like a little snack in the Uber. It's an hour from the airport. So that was a learning curve, but I think we've got it down pat. We're only 3-4 months in, so we currently are dosing in Melbourne as well, in between. So the tricky part is finding a GP. That was also tricky, but luckily we were lucky enough that another mum has found a GP for us, and we got the name off the list. But otherwise, we had 2 rejections from the GPs that didn't want to, wouldn't be able to help us. So the other trickiest part is the dosing, because we're doing multiple allergens. So I think you have to be on. You have to be really on. You have to be really prepared. You have to have the the paper in front of you. And I kind of do the thing in the when we do dosing as well, where we double check, like, all right, milk, solution B, 4 mils. All right. And then we do that, like we do 3 people checking probably at home before we do it, because it's early in the morning. You're up preparing breakfast and, lunch for school. So you've got to be really on. You've got to be with your team at home as well. You have to let them know everything that's happening. But otherwise, everything's been pretty good. We're looking forward to, like both of us, we were looking forward to everything. Forward to graduating. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Amelia. Thank you for those tips. I think what you've just talked about with some of the tricky aspects is a nice segue to the next lot of questions. So, and for all of you beautiful mums on the panel today, just giving us those tips just right now is so helpful. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself, but I'm sure the group who's to begin the journey, because they are very much the questions that we've been thinking about, certainly with the questions that have come through from our community and what I've been thinking about. It's like, okay, how do we do this? How do we do the travel? How do we do the breakfast and the time period and all that sort of stuff, and maybe some of the stuff we need to navigate. So these are all such important information for us starting out this journey. The next lot of questions, I'll just ask them, and then whoever feels they'd like to answer them, please feel free just to unmute. So the next question, it does relate to the morning routine. So we've already touched on it with some of the answers, but let's dig a little bit deeper here. How do you juggle the morning routine? So, you've talked about the wake up, the breakfast, the waiting an hour, and then waiting half an hour, that is, then there's a dose, and then you have to wait up until another hour or so before your child goes to school. And I'll just tack on another part of another question, really. Did anyone here negotiate a slightly later start to school to accommodate for this rest time? So that's a question that's also come through, and I think it's a really important one when we're trying to figure out how are we going to make this work with our little ones. So who would like to start there? Yeah, go for it, Christy.
I'll say it is work, getting your child up to be ready to start school. My daughter was in year 10 last year, so I was very keen to do as much as I could before she is in the last 2 years of school. So we agreed a 10 to 6 wake up to allow her some time to get up. Then she has her carb. 20 minutes, she'd go and get ready for school. Then we would dose, and then she would sit on her phone. Teenagers love sitting on their phone. So it was easy to keep her rested, which is not the same for a toddler, I understand. But then I was happy that within 2 hours of her rest period, she can be dropped off at school, and there was no impact for her for the rest of the day. She's an athlete, so she used to train every afternoon. So we used to make sure that that was her full rest period in the morning, and then the rest of the day was not impacted at all. When we transferred to local updosing, we looked at her, because we had to fit in with the clinic days. We looked at her timetable on those Tuesdays, and I used to pick her up at the start of morning tea We would go on up dose, then I would take her home. We'd wait at the clinic, at the doctor's for an hour, then I would take her home for another hour and then drop her off at the end of lunch. So she was missing the least amount of school as possible. And that was very, very doable. She, you know, she could go back and she would go to school for the next couple of hours and then she would still do her training after that. So she'd had 4 hours after an up dose and she was back to training, you know, in a high intensity sort of sport. So it is doable, but it's a lot of work and you've got to be very organised and structured and listen to them if they're sick. That's the only thing. If they're sick, it does throw a spanner in the works, but just be organised, structured, and it will make everybody's life so much easier.
Thanks, Christy. That's wonderful. Anyone else would like to chime in here? Go for it.
I had a different protocol for different child. So for Amelia, she was compliant, no issues, iPad for an hour. I would actually drop her off for the next hour to school and ask the nurses center, which they have at school, to observe her for another half an hour. And the only one time I didn't really remind the school that she shouldn't do sports for another hour is when they actually changed the schedule and they had sports. So she had a little bit of a reaction, but the school didn't pick it up at all. There was nothing major, a couple of hives, but she did tell me afterwards. So that was, for me, a red flag that the school, again, mismanaged. They didn't call me, nothing. So every other time, if it was a sports day, I would literally have to remind.
Love you.
I would have to remind the school each sports day if I do that, if I drop her off after that first hour. For Alex, he always had a late start. We just told the school this is going to be the year where we're not going to come in on time for Alex. So he would come in at 10, 10:30, whenever, because of his vomiting habits. I had to be very mindful of that. So he would come in whenever we come in, and Amelia was always there on time. So different kids, different protocols. But he finished in 10 months. She finished almost double the time. So different kids, different experiences.
Yeah, thanks, Nina. Yeah, two kids within the same family and very different experience. So a demonstration for all of us here that our experiences will be slightly different as well, especially like two kids within a family, it's different. So thank you. Just a reminder for anyone who's not on mute, if you could just pop yourself on mute, that would be wonderful. Any other panelists would like to? Did you want to go for it, Anna?
I was just going to add a couple of things. So my son Stefano started last year. He was in year 6, and initially, so he is the world's slowest eater. He was born a slow eater, will die a slow eater. We had to navigate getting him up earlier and earlier so that we could get the carb breakfast in, the waiting time. We actually had to extend the waiting time between breakfast and dosing, because if he dosed too soon to eating breakfast, it didn't sit with him, and it would actually make him nauseous. So we went from a 20-minute wait time to a 30-minute wait time, and as he's gotten better, so we're back down to 20 minutes now, which is a lot better. But we just found that you had to be really organized. So we would actually, apart from the liquid doses, once we moved to food, all his food is pre-weighed, and actually like in containers or in bags ready to go. So we don't have to worry about that at 4:30 in the morning, trying to work out, is it 1.1 grams or is it one, like, you know, it can be, when you haven't had a coffee in the morning, you're trying to get all of this done and get out the door to get on with your day. It can be quite stressful. So being, as everyone has said, as organized as possible. And once you move to the foods, getting it in the fridge, weighed, ready to go, even if it's labeled or whatever. And I think Amelia mentioned getting in help. So like my husband helps a lot, you know, and, you know, if there's mornings where, you know, I've got somewhere to go, he'll just take over the dosing. So as long as everybody knows exactly how much the child needs, when they need it, what order everything is done in, that paperwork that you get every time you go to clinic that says, you know, wheat X amount, egg X amount, it needs to be on the fridge or somewhere central so that it can be seen. I know some parents were like writing it down on paper and all of that. I think as long as everybody just communicates with each other, however you feel that communication works, I feel like this is not something that can be done alone. Like if you can do this by yourself, oh my God, my hat goes off to you. You are absolutely amazing. But I feel like it takes a village. It really does. And there are so many times that, we hit hurdles and I wanted to quit, but the beautiful mums in our group pulled me through, and Sam's actually one of those mums, and Nina as well, who was always there, patting me on the back, cheering us on and all of that. So to say that we've finished is actually, I also have to thank the mums in the group for the support. So getting the support within your group is one of the things that I highly recommend. Find your person or your people and really support each other, because no one else in the world understands what we go through. If you don't have an allergy child, you don't know what it's like. It's very isolating. Like the big ones, wheat and milk, the most common ingredients, they are so isolating. Everywhere our child goes, they are confronted by those allergens. And I've got a friend who's got a son who's got peanut allergies. He's best friends with my son. And even she says to me, I don't know how you do it. It's just something we do. We don't have a choice. We weren't given a choice. And our children weren't given a choice. They just had to learn to deal and be careful of these things. But this protocol just gives them a whole new lease on life. And honestly, whatever reservations you have, I promise you, I sit here and tell you wholeheartedly, coming from breakfast, it is 100% worth it.
Oh, thank you, Anna. My goodness, I was getting a little bit emotional there as you were talking through that. And look, no, that's so wonderful. And I guess, the takeaways from this this discussion here about routine, and that we've just sort of covered, is it's a team effort. It requires good communication skills, verbally, written, and it requires some really good organization skills as well. So I've made those notes for myself, and I'm sure as others are doing this at the same time right now. So it's really important that we, understand what we're going to be navigating and journeying, and what are these skills and processes, what we can utilize, and, hearing it from you guys who have gone first, and having some wonderful experiences in experiencing food freedom. This is just wonderful, wonderful information. Would anyone else like to add before we move on to the next question? Okay, we've got some interesting ones on, I guess, the area of anxiety. So, did you notice any increased anxiety from your child, and are there any measures you had in place to help with this? Who would like to answer that one?
I might quickly jump
Go for
in.
it.
The children, all of our children, look up to us to see how we react. So if we are stressed, if we're having a bad day and trying to doze at the same time, they will feel that nervousness. So it's very important to be self-aware. I was usually very stressed if I was delegating, I actually pretty micromanaged myself, the whole thing, except when my mom was here once a year from overseas. So once I gave the task to my stepfather and my husband, they went away with my child into more remote area. And then messed it all up. They didn't realize the child has to finish the whole dose. He was on real foods by then. Luckily, I was coming the next day, but I was so angry with my stepfather and my husband. Like, the anger I had was really counterproductive. I was furious. I don't think I've ever been angry with anyone like that in my life, because they mixed the doses and everything else. It was literally one day. So the grand scheme of things, nothing changed, right? But I was furious. So controlling our own emotions, facial expressions, body language is super important, because the child can become anxious because of our reaction that day towards that situation. That's just my 50 cents.
Nina. Yes, we have to manage our own anxiety. And that was another question, actually. So we've got something that's come through the group. I'm just going to ask this question that piggybacks off that. In terms of experiencing anxiety yourselves, has anyone experienced this due to fear of reactions or fear of the unknown, I guess, in some way, shape, or form when being on this program, and how you managed your own anxiety or feelings of worry or stress? So Nina, you talk through, like, we really need to manage our own feelings and emotions, and they're all valid, but we also need to manage them because our children do feed off that energy. So does anyone have any tips that may have helped you along this journey as a mum?
I'll just say something about anxiety in general. Everyone's going to have different levels of anxiety, and often it's because of the unknown. You don't know a lot about this program if you haven't started it. But I would just say arm yourself with knowledge, education about what OIT is. And when you have an understanding about what the body's doing, it really helps. And another thing that really helped me early on in the program, I'm going to recommend a book that was so good. It's called, if everyone's got a pen and paper, it's called The Food Allergy Fix. And it's written by an unpronounceable immunologist. Now, her name is Sakina Shikari Bajawala, Sakina Shikari, and Bajawala is Bajowwalah, if everyone's got that. It actually talks, I think it'll answer 90% of everyone's questions. It talks about immunotherapy, what she does. The protocol is very, very similar to the one we're doing. The overlaps are incredible. And she talks about children, about adults. It literally will answer everything. And if you go onto her website, I think it's foodallergyfix.com, there's also another book she's written for younger kids called Zippy, something about a racing car who's allergic. Just the information there gave me so much knowledge and put me in a place where I thought, this just makes sense. This is amazing. It makes sense. And it's answered everything about the protocols, about the routines, absolutely everything. So that's a really good start to arm yourself with some knowledge, education.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Sam. Education is key, isn't it? Really understanding the ins and the outs as much as we can. You've highlighted that us parents who are starting on this journey with our children, spending that time to arm ourselves with that information to build our confidence, really understand how it's all working. And oh, there we go, we've got Zippy there. Awesome. Yeah, resources.
I haven't read that for young kids. I've heard it's very, very good. But yeah, definitely start with that. And then from that book, you might branch out and go to something more scientific or just get involved with the program, and it will all start making a lot of sense.
Yeah, wonderful. So it's like putting pieces into a puzzle, right? So even just being here today, we're putting that extra piece in that puzzle as we're sort of moving through this journey. It's about putting those pieces, collecting them over time and putting them into the puzzle and learning from what, how it all comes together. Listening to these journeys does help a lot though. So thank you so much. Okay, so we've got a few more questions on this topic. Now, did any of you experience, I think to begin with, maybe one or two of you did mention with teens, sometimes there's refusal, but did anyone have refusal of a dosage with your younger ones or your teens? And then how did you work through that? I think Anna might have said something about getting creative because of flavor or taste, but can you give us some tips on if your child does refuse a dose? What can we do to work around it? Who would like to answer that one? Yeah, go, Christy. Thank you.
Okay, well, egg is just one of those ones that when you're having raw egg white is not a palatable taste after a while. So, every child is different and how much they start on them. But when they get onto real egg white, it used to make me feel sick measuring out the egg white for Sky to have. and seeing her basically have a shot glass of egg white. And she really didn't like the taste. And that's where we had to just sort of say, well, okay, let's see how far we can get along with just straight egg white before we can mix it with something. And then once we started mixing it, she was grateful because she had tasted it by itself. So she was then happy to go the next step. So she had started to refuse it when the taste was awful. And then we mixed it with the juice. So she was also dosing milk. So she'd have an egg white mixed with juice, and then she'd have a dose of milk, which to me makes it feel all disgusting anyway. But she coped and she did well. And now, because she just has her maintenance dose, it's all mixed together. So yeah, so you just got to work out what you can, and obviously going back to the doctors at Immunity Group and just checking that what you're mixing it with is okay. It's not going to change the proteins, that type of thing, and just double checking everything to ensure that what you're doing is correct. So you're not going to impact on your progress with what you're mixing it with.
Thanks, Christy. Yeah, awesome. Okay, that's interesting because we're navigating eggs, so that's going to be an interesting one. We've not had egg at all in our household for so long. And then, you know, my jammer will be having egg white. I hadn't thought about that, right? But it's exciting in one way and then in another way, right? And I love the discussion that we've had here too. I know Amelia also touched on it, like the not only Christy, you mentioned checking with the doctors if you're thinking of combining something or doing something a little bit that maybe hasn't been detailed, that you check with the program doctors. Amelia talked about, you know, having other family members, you know, double checking, triple checking as to what's going on in the kitchen. And I think a few others have also mentioned that too. So really great tips there in terms of always double checking everything that you do when it's new and make sure you're all good to go. And
I might add
we
something,
did have,
if I may,
please,
Sarah.
Nina, go on.
So,
Yeah.
the little children, especially when you transition liquids from such as milk and an egg from the syringe to the actual food, it's quite a different taste. Like if you've never, it's diluted milk is not the same as real milk, and vice versa. Egg white is particularly disgusting. Actually, Christy, I agree with you. When I tried it, I would have thrown up. Like it's pretty gross. But we managed it with a really pretty shot glass. Kids love to imitate adults, and we actually have shot glasses at home, of course. And then I said, okay, so I ordered, and Anna, I think you had something similar for Stefano later as a customized cup or glass. So you can customize a shot glass because liquid egg white is never going to be more than that, right? So if you get a beautiful shot glass, once you actually transition to real foods and the volumes become big enough, the child can have a shot glass and you can have cheers. And so a lot of positive psychology. Anytime there is a refusal, there is always a way. It's just you have to identify why is there a refusal. And we do recommend checking out Food Allergy Hive resources. It's a food allergy mom and clinical psychologist for children from the US, foodallergyhive.com. She has a lot of strategies on her website, and she went through both sleep and oral immunotherapy, so it's a little bit different. But you know, if all of us perhaps could also come up with tips for different age groups, because there is always a way. It's just if you can't find it yourself, you have to ask for help and be very, very creative and think outside the box, because the child needs to have that, or the young adult. But there is a protocol for everything.
Thank you, Nina. We're going to take two questions from the chat since they've come up, and then we'll return back to our community questions. Bruce and
Sorry,
Olivia.
Sarah, I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody. I have to leave. I'm so sorry, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the thing, and good luck to all the new families starting. But yeah, you'll be fine. Just like I said, organization and be strong.
Thank you so much, Anna. We really appreciate you spending, you know, taking some time out of what you're doing to chat to the group today. Thank you.
No worries. Bye.
So one of the questions from Bruce and Olivia was, when you say you've had hurdles, does this mean your children suffered anaphylaxis while doing the protocol? What do these hurdles look like? If it's not anaphylaxis, are they mild reactions? So who would like to talk about some of the hurdles that you may have experienced while being on the protocol and how you've worked through those?
Okay,
Cool.
I'll go. I'll go again.
Go for it.
I've had hurdles. Hurdles for us living in Queensland with the humidity, the heat. I have a child who's got eczema as well as all the allergies. And as you have your dose and you need to keep cool and not elevate your heart, she decided one day she was going to keep her hoodie on, and she had a pair of jeans on, and then she decided to straighten her hair, and then she came out of her bedroom and she was bright red and covered in hives. And she'd done that during her rest period. She thought she could just stay cozy. And this was in September, so it wasn't cold. And yeah, she, we rang the nurse. They talked me down, because obviously I was like, this was the first hurdle we'd had at home with updosing. But we managed it. We were cool, calm and collected by the time, I sort of said, why are you wearing all of that and then you're straightening your hair? You're just getting yourself so hot. So once we'd cooled her down and gave her some more of the recommended steps in the protocol to calm her down, she was fine. And within an hour, we were back to our day. So it's amazing from what, I suppose, if we had seen those hives prior to starting OIT, I would have EpiPenned and we'd been on the way to hospital. Whereas we just rang the nurse and we just worked through it, and she was fine. And, even since graduating, we've had mild reactions and we just worked through it. And she, she's very grateful that we've actually done that. And so was my husband and myself and the rest of our family, because we know that would have ended in EpiPen and hospitalisation. So, yeah, you do manage it. And once they're starting to have real milk or real egg, even if it is 0.2 of a mil, it's amazing when you've had 15 years of exclusion. So when they get to graduation, it's, the relief you feel. So yeah, there are hurdles, but you just overcome them and you get stronger, and the kids get stronger as a result.
Could I quickly add, Christy just reminded me, once we had an interstate patient coming from, I don't want to identify the city, but driving a lot, and she came fully in a hoodie, and she was hot before even dosing. It was 8 in the morning, no shops were open, she had nothing underneath. So I quickly, that was like, the team said, you're too hot and you're wearing like winter clothes. So I ran to home, got my husband's t-shirt, came back, and we asked her to change, because heat is such an important factor to consider. And even though it could be, cold outside, when you're inside, you really need to, cool down before you can updose, especially, and even at home dosing. But just to answer that question, hurdle, we did have one accidental exposure during the program to Woolies bought product, which we tried to chase through Victorian Food Authority, but we never got around to getting satisfactory answer. So it was an unlabeled product, which clearly contained dairy. And my daughter had anaphylaxis within maybe 5 minutes. It was very clear. The first time I ever EpiPen myself, and it was all fine. But that can happen. So if you have anaphylaxis for whatever reason during the program, for us, it was accidental exposure. You just have to slow down in the program. You never stop the program, you slow down. But psychologically, that's a hurdle, because, suddenly we were on this amount of milk, and then we have to go down and stay on that lower dose for a couple of months sometimes. In our case, was for 2 months. So that is the hurdle, your own mind. You have to accept that you're not actually going backwards, you're following the body. But in that moment in your head, your self-talk tells you that, oh my God, I'm going backwards. And it's in the grand scheme of things, when you graduate, it doesn't matter if you have to wait on the same dose for 2 months. I mean, with full freedom, it's a different life. But in that moment, your self-talk can be negative. So you really have to have surrounding sort of system and people who would help you go through that period for your own mind. So it's nothing physical that cannot be overcome, but mentally, you're the driver of the process. So if you are down, you're compromising everything. So yeah, having that strong support network is essential.
Thank you, Nina. Yeah, I guess that there, as we've heard, there have been some hurdles, and of course, the what type of hurdle it is important, but it's also, it sounds from this discussion, it's not only important what's actually happened, but how we then move through it and what we take from it in terms of an experience, a learning experience, and how we might then change things so that wouldn't happen again. And yeah, accidental exposures from a food product that's unlabeled, that's very, very difficult, but obviously it would be a brand that you would maybe potentially avoid altogether, and there's a learning lesson in and of itself just there. So thank you for those, Christy and Nina, who have answered that question, for reminding us that there's always there's time after that hurdle, and so it might feel like a setback temporarily, but not necessarily in the big grand scheme of things. So really great reminder. I'm just sitting here trying to make all these mental notes. I've had all these feelings within me, so thank you. Okay, so I just need to touch on, because we did have this as a question from the community, in terms of body temperature, because children will be children. So did you need to keep your child cool for the rest of the day, or just after the dosing period? So we'll just make that nice and clear. If anyone could answer that question, that would be wonderful. And does it differ with different environments? So you've got warmer places within Australia, and then you've got some cooler places within Australia and New Zealand. So would anyone like to answer that question?
I will. All right.
Thanks.
Look, it really is the 2-hour period. The full day is a bit of over exaggeration, but being in different climates certainly makes a difference. So after dosing, I always find that first hour is sort of the most critical. That's when you really just want to make sure that they're quiet and calm, and it's not too hot inside. And then that second hour, still quiet time, but they might be getting dressed at home and doing homework, or just doing whatever they're doing. But once that period is over, even if you're in the car or they're on a bus on their way to uni, like my child, that second hour, we still consider that rest time, because she's sitting on a bus, which is half an hour, or on a train, and she doesn't have that 15-minute walk until right at the end of that period. Once the 2-hour period is up, it's pretty safe, I personally would say, and I think that's the protocol as well. So, but just be mindful of the environment inside. We've had some summer days where my daughter felt a little bit off and scratchy, and she was sort of scratching her throat after dosing, and I realized it was just too hot inside. So I put the aircon on and put her in front of a fan for 20 minutes and solved the problem. And body heat really does affect how you react, so that's important.
Thank you, Sam. That's great. Thank you for bringing clarity for that question. We've got a question on diet.
Can I answer as well, Sarah? A lot of our children in the program have a lot of environmental allergies. So it's not just, the program itself targets food, but more than 50% of children have dust mites, molds, grasses. So in a high pollen season, if your child is more reactive, the team might recommend having a daily antihistamine during that high pollen season. So the environment matters so much. We try to avoid staying in hotels with carpets during the program, because our children and myself, we have very high dust mite allergy. But during the program, we didn't want to add that. So I remember checking into a beautiful place in Canberra, and within 1 hour, we had to check out, because all of us started reacting to the dust in the carpets, even though the place was beautiful, and moved into a friend's place. So just when you go on holidays, bodies can become more sensitive generally with changing of the environment and different, air microbiome and everything. So it's really important to know where you're going to stay, to try and minimize environmental allergen exposure is really, really crucial for at least people with environmental allergies, which many of us have.
Such an important point in terms of the combination of those environmental allergies and how important it is to consider them whilst being in the program for the food allergies that are being desensitized to. So, and that, thanks, Nina, for bringing in some of that information about traveling, and again, preparing and just being prepared for plan B, I guess, because you were at a hotel, and that wasn't going to sit for too long. You were out of there as soon as you could be. So it sounds like we need to be prepared and organized, as I mentioned before, but also have your plan Bs and your plan Cs, just in case you need to act upon those. Thank you. We had a question around diet. And this one is, did any of you do any more with your child's diet, aside from the program probiotics and prebiotics, during the program to maximize things like their gut health, their overall health? Would anyone like to answer that? Done anything a little bit?
We had done a lot of gut health prior to starting the program, but also with 3 teenage girls and one of them being celiac as well, we realised you've got to live. So we had sort of gone down the GAPS sort of diet early on, years prior to starting OIT. And so we still keep a lot of those type of protocols with the bone broths, that type of thing. But you can't force no sugar onto teenage kids that want to have a Slurpee. So it did not impact, I don't think, our experience whatsoever. And, you know, we had other family members that travelled with us from Queensland and they did nothing in terms of gut health and still graduated the program. So I think, you know, organic's always best, but that comes at a huge cost. So my husband and I used to fight about cost of certain things that we would purchase, that I wanted to purchase organic and he didn't want to pay the money. So I think, look, your health is something that you have to manage within yourself, and I think everything does help, but you can still do OIT without, I believe, without changing any other factors, and just follow the protocol itself.
Thank you, Christy. That's great. Anyone else like to chime in there?
For my son, we probably got worse because we had to bribe him with all different types of ice cream in terms of taking the maintenance dose, and also the towards the end of the program, volumes for nuts can become quite massive. So if it can actually, the biggest challenge is the challenge to your parenting skills, really. So I was a permissive parent for him, not for Amelia. So if he felt like, you know, this type of ice cream, I would make it happen. So obviously that's not a role modeling that's necessarily good, but until we finished, I did everything. Like, that was our priority. And also Dr. Jones was coming, so that was my own mental deadline. I wanted him to graduate when Dr. Jones is here to give him certificates. So we did everything for him to make that happen. So you know, whether that's good or bad, it doesn't, you know, it's a different argument. But for Amelia, she is susceptible to parasites. And apparently 30% of Australians do have parasites, but with too many parasites, the overgrowth of parasites, that can actually increase inflammation in the body. And that can you can become more reactive if you have food allergies on top of your parasites. So sort of deworming every 3 months for us is necessary as a family. Or in one particular case, we had to go further and take some special medications. I mean, we do live with animals, but if you're susceptible to parasites, that's one factor you really need to look out during the program as well. So that kind of answers that one of the previous questions is, you know, what can be a hurdle for us was after we went to Bali, and after Bali, we came back with a zootopic parasite, which is a really difficult one to treat. Yes, we did swim in the pools at the zoo. So that was a challenge for us, getting rid of a zootopic parasite from Bali. It was, you know, of course, you question whether you should have gone there in the first place during the program, but it can be a hurdle and it can be a challenge, and it's not easy to get rid of. So it took a few months.
You got there in the end, right? So what I'm getting from the answers here is that there is no right or wrong. There might be more ideal and less ideal, but really, is it really more ideal if a child's not eating X foods, but they're the foods that light them up. And during the program, you're needing to move through it, and you want to move through it with flow and less, I guess, with less force. That's what I'm thinking. Less force, more flow. And sometimes you have to bring in these activities or foods or whatever it is, just to help it along. And I think that's beautiful energy in and of itself. So it'll be nourishing just that. So it's thank you. Another good reminder there. There's no right or wrong, really. And I think if we take that, we keep that in mind, then we can be confident in our parenting skills and really know what's probably right for the situation deep within ourselves. So we're going to finish off with a couple of questions, because I know we're really at time, but these ones relate to maintenance. We'll just really quickly, what does, like, once you sort of get through the program, what does a maintenance dose look like, and can they be eaten at any time of the day, as opposed to like the program doses where you're dosing in the morning and it's a bit more regimented? Is there a bit more flexibility with that? Would anyone like to answer that question in terms of your experience for those who have graduated?
You go, Sam.
Oh, look, I was just going to say it's something you will discuss when you get to that point, because it's very individual. There is definitely flexibility around it. We're in maintenance for some allergens, but not for all of them. But you discuss that with the doctors and the nurses, and you'll definitely find a place that works for you. And the maintenance dose is definitely less than what you were at before you challenged and your challenge dose. So it's very doable. And just have that discussion when you're up to it. It's not difficult to sort something out.
Thank you, Sam. That's great. Christy, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say, because we've finished the program for both dairy and egg, and it is a lot less for maintenance. It's just part of her routine, to do, and she knows that eventually that'll even get less and less days as she progresses through the maintenance period. So she just does it, and so she knows that the rest of the day she can actually go out and do things. Other families have changed the times, but we are morning people, so it works best for us to not have to think about it. So other people have changed it to the afternoons. I suppose you can deal with, you have to work out what's right for your family when you get to that stage to keep it up, but it is so important to still dose every day and to have those rest periods every day. So it is work through the program, and it still is work after the program, but the relief you feel when like my daughter's going to year 11 camp this week. It's the first camp she's ever had in her life where she says she's not the allergy kid. So she's just happy to be able to stand up with her friends and pick food that they've had. So so we'll manage that through the camp, but we'll she's just happy to eat, like everybody else, just be normal, as normal as they can be.
Nina?
Some moms have really creative recipes for maintenance, like protein balls, and it can be really, really creative when you get to those larger volumes. You can have your own recipe even, and you can share with others. So maintenance is significantly, once you're in a maintenance phase, you don't feel that psychological pressure which you put on yourself in the first place about the deadline. Like, that's one thing I would like to tell all the parents. Don't give your child a particular date, because you don't know if they're going to get sick, and that will just have to prolong their graduation time. So we made that mistake and promised to do something on a birthday, and then the birthday came and went, and my daughter was like, Dr. Jones, my mom promised me that you will finish your program. And so don't promise a date, but when you graduate, promise maybe something to do as a family, whether it's a trip or an activity or something. But maintenance feels very light when you get there. It just feels light. You just have to do it, and you find different ways which work for your family in consultation with the team.
Wonderful. So it sounds like we're doing a fair bit of heavy lifting during the program, and then there's still maintenance, but it's certainly doable because it's so much lighter, and it's part of the daily life. It's part of daily eating, right? And that's what we're working towards. We did have a follow-up question about is maintenance a daily activity? Nina, did you want to quickly? It is, right?
Well, all of us graduated recently. I mean, Dr. Jones's first Australian patient finished 12 years ago, and they dose about 3 to 4 times a week for multiple foods. You know, all of us pretty much recently finished. So we are not at that stage where we can talk about dropping the days, but every year you will be doing a blood test and you will check in with Dr. Jones and with the team. And then if the numbers are on your side, potentially you could drop a day. But that's I think all of us are still in the early stages to be able to comment. But yes, Dr. Jones's first patient from Australia 12 years ago it works in a food shop, interestingly, in Queensland, and she doses 3 to 4 times a week. You know, a couple of nuts and a couple of other things a day. What is that for food freedom?
And I'd also say, you know, you spend so much time getting to this stage where your child is not at risk every time they leave the house, letting them have something every day to ensure, you know, letting your child have real food every day as part of the maintenance is nothing. Knowing that they can walk out of the house and be touched by somebody that's had a milkshake, or, you know, it's the smallest part of the program is the maintenance. The hard yards are while you're going through it, getting over the fact that you're giving your child this food that they've been told that they can't have, or that you've seen them in hospital by breathing that food. You know, maintenance is the easy part of the program.
Yeah, wonderful. That's yeah, so awesome. This discussion has been really wonderful. So I wanted to thank all the beautiful mums who have been our panelists today. So that's Nina, Amelia, Anna, Christy, and Sam. Really thank you from the depths of our heart in terms of taking the time to share your journey, your experiences, your hints, your tips, everything that you have shared, because this is, you know, we talked about arming yourself with this knowledge, and what better knowledge is, you know, is it, what can we get that's even better than, you know, lived experiences, mums and families and children who have done this, and they're on the other side, or, you know, during, you know, they're with you, Amelia, you're in the middle of it, but you're, you know, a number of months ahead of us that are going to be starting shortly. So, you know, this is invaluable information, and a big thank you on behalf of Immunity Group Australia that you're here today. Yeah, Christy, did you want to say something else?
I just wanted to say too, it is so daunting when you're starting this program, but Dr. Jones treats every patient individually, and, you know, both Samantha and myself went overseas with our children and our families while they're on the program, as did Nina, and, you know, that you would think that would be hard, but it's doable because Dr. Jones and the team are there to give you advice on dosing times, how you can manage to take your allergens overseas. So you don't give up your whole life. It does become a major part of your life, and it should do, because it is something that's going to change your family's life forever. But you don't have to give up everything. You know, traveling, holidays, it'll just all become so much easier. So I can't recommend it enough. And thank you, Nina.
Thank you, everyone. And I would like to also thank Sam. Sam has actually, together with Susan, created a whole traveling pack and tips for parents who are coming on board, and even us if we forget. So Sam, thank you so much. She's an aviation travel expert, and 3 months into the program, she went overseas. Dr. Jones said, absolutely fine. Sam, would you like to share quickly that experience? I was.
Yeah. So before the program, before we even knew anything about it, and before Louisa had a really bad reaction, which got us into the program, we'd organised an overseas trip to Greece and Italy. And then when I found the program and Louisa started, I just assumed, well, maybe we can't go on this trip this year. It'll be disappointing. But Dr. Jones just said, no, do it. You'll be fine. And he got us to a point that she was on solutions that we could take overseas. So the milk and the egg, she was actually on real milk and egg, which made it so much easier. Otherwise, they might have gone off throughout the process. Everything else had a really good shelf life. And I did a lot of research. I looked into eskies. I looked into all sorts of things as to how we were going to transport everything, how we were going to deal with it. And honestly, it was the best thing we could have done. We went along with it. We had our holiday. We had the most wonderful time. No hiccups. The only thing that did happen very quickly is we were on a ferry, and Louisa had ordered a coffee with oat milk. And by that stage, she was well over cross-contamination, and she tasted it and thought, oh, this just tastes funny. And she'd never had almond milk before, so she didn't really understand the flavour, and that's probably what was in the coffee. But because she'd been dosing, she was absolutely fine. And I was the one having the heart attack because I thought, we're on a ferry, I've got to grab the EpiPen, what's going to happen? She didn't react at all. And she'd only had a mouthful, but before the program, that mouthful would have pretty much been EpiPen and a hospital visit. So how it's changed our lives is beyond recognition. We're only we've graduated a few allergens, and we're very close to another one, so we've probably got 4 or 5 months to go of the program, give or take. But to see Louisa go out with her friends after uni, to do things on the spare of the moment, not worry about where she's going to eat, because she can find things on the menu now that she can eat safely. It's just amazing that she's got social freedom, and we're not even at the end of the program, so there's a lot more to come for us. It's fabulous.
Oh, super. Thank you so much, Christy and Sam. Those parting words are wonderful. Amelia and Nina, did you have anything you'd like to share before we wrap up with our community here today?
I'd like to share something. I think the whole idea of first of all, the parents supporting parents, I find that really, really helps. I know it's probably cliche, but who better to know than someone who's already been going through the same journey? So I found that was the biggest factor of the program that probably is underplayed, because you focus too much on the protocol and everything, but just the program, the way that it's made up, seeing everyone graduate, it makes such a big impression to the child. My 10-year-old is sitting quietly looking at all the teenagers, and when that happens, it just sort of like flips the switch for him that there's hope, and he's learned so much about patience, and it's just a beautiful journey that we're currently on. So yeah, thank you so much for to Nina, Immunity Group, and all the other moms as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. I think Dr. Jones wasn't impressed when I started organizing the WhatsApp groups, and in America, it's a very individualized process. There is no group mentality. There is no herd mentality. We have actually a village mentality in Australia. We try to do everything and support each other across different groups and stages. And this is why it's very important for the child to come to the clinic even before the program, to feel the space, to talk to the nurses, to talk to the team, and to psychologically prepare. We're the only patient-funded, patient-led, and patient-driven program probably in the world of this kind, and without parental support, I don't think we would exist in the first place. So it is the backbone of this is the backbone of our program.
Yeah, thank you for those parting words, Nina. Look, it's been such a wonderful webinar. We had a number of questions that we've gone through. There have been some that we haven't, but just knowing now that you're within this community, you're going to, for many, you'll be starting your OIT journey. You can always ask your questions of the Immunity Group Australia team. There's Nina, there's the nurse, and then there's the doctors, and of course the pharmacists that are all working together. And that is very comforting. For myself, speaking personally, it's really comforting to know that there is a wonderful team, and that there is this, I guess, herd approach, Nina, that you're nurturing, because, mums supporting mums, parents supporting parents, and just, humans supporting each other. Along what could be more of a trickier journey, but it's made so much easier with each other's support. So a big thank you also to our community. We're pretty full house here today. Thank you for taking your time out on a Sunday morning to join us in this Q&A. So a big thank you.